So today, again, so Katherine Sumrall, Real Estate with Katherine at Keller Realty, and I am coming to you today in a series called 2M, so Market and Mindset. And we're actually going to, I'm going to get my screen sharing going here. Okay, here we go. So yeah, let's dive right into it. Market and mindset. We're going to, some of this that I've went over last week, I want to keep in here for everyone to gain perspective. And the purpose of the 2M series, for those that are joining in for the first time, it's really to help disseminate information relative to the real estate market and Durango as a response to COVID-19. So for perspective, 5 dynamics of the housing market that were different than the 2008 shift that we saw. A recession does not equal a housing crisis. Last recession, 2008 was a reflection of a housing crisis, yet that doesn't, they don't always align or correlate directly. So the chief economist at NAR recently quoted, "The temporary softening of the real estate market will likely be followed by a strong rebound once the economic quarantine is lifted, and it's critical that supply is sufficient to meet pent-up demand." Just good perspective there. So let's dive into the 5 factors that are different. So, and I'll go over these fairly quickly since we went over that last week. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to comment. So appreciation, leading up to the crash, we had much higher appreciation in this country than we see today, and leading up to the crash respective to 2008. In fact, so the highest levels of appreciation that we've seen leading up to today is below the lowest levels that we saw leading up to 2008 correction. Mortgage credit. So mortgage credit availability index is a measure that gauges the difficulty to secure a loan. And the higher the index, the easier it was to get a loan, or easier it is to get a loan. The lower the index, the harder it is to obtain credit. And today we're nowhere near those levels that you can see here as to the availability of receiving credit, mortgage credit or a loan. Number of homes sold. So one of the leading causes of the crash in 2008 was that there was an oversupply of inventory. And across the country, we have less than 6 months worth of inventory, an undersupply of homes available for interested buyers. So you've heard the term buyer's market and seller's market relative to real estate, and that talks about the amount of inventory that's available relative to the demand. So here again, in the red, you can start to see as there's more inventory in the marketplace, that becomes the leverage of the market is to the buyer. They have the ability to look at multiple homes. There's more product available. In a seller's market, it's the opposite. There's less product available. The sellers have the leverage conceptually in the marketplace. And then there's that neutral ground. So the use of home equity, this chart shows the difference between how people are accessing equity. So yes, so you can see in the 2008 cycle, there was a lot of equity being cashed out, a significant difference than what we are seeing today. And of course, these numbers will get updated as time progresses here, and as we track what our cash out refinances and looking like, and what's the gauge of people using that equity in their home for cash flow or survival or financial needs. Home equity positions in general, we are seeing a significant increase in equity positions across the nation than we saw in 2008. So yeah, that's a pretty large, it's a pretty large statistic, honestly. Almost 50%, or around 50% of homes across the country have at least 50% equity in the home. Okay, so going into first quarter 2020 statistics, those just were released here recently. Number of homes sold in La Plata County was up over 10% over this time last year. Number of homes sold in town Durango was up 25%. The number of homes sold in the Durango and townhome and condo market was down 12%. So interesting statistics there. The number of homes sold in Bayfield was up 10%, Bayfield rural, and then Bayfield in town was up 33%. So certainly some positive indicators there. So let's look at time and look at year over year. So Durango new listings, we've been trending this now for several weeks. You can see new listings in 2020 are in the red, and then 2019 new listings are in the blue. And so interesting to see that we're generally tracking on the same type of trend. Though overall, you can see that our numbers are starting to there's starting to be more of a gap here between 2019 inventory coming on the market and 2020 inventory coming on the market. So there, in certain respects, when we start talking about what's the strategy relative to your specific situation, this data is helpful to analyze and get closer to developing a strategy relative to, again, your goals, your product that you have to sell. If you're an in-town home and you're considering selling, know that the inventory is certainly lower than it was here this time last year. And there's opportunity to leverage and what that means as a seller. Pending inventory or the number of homes that have pended, so a buyer and a seller have come into an agreement to sell or purchase. 2019, you can see that we had just higher numbers here. We had more pending activity in this time frame than we have seen this year thus far. And maybe we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick here, which I think is a really positive indicator, you guys. I mean, we are in, despite COVID, we are in a time of which we are going to see more inventory coming on the market. We're going to see that increase in activity. And I think that this is very positive. One thing to note, what we these previous two slides, so new listings and pending inventory, the ratio between those two are what we call absorption rates. So just how quickly is the market inventory being absorbed? And I thought it was really interesting and a really positive note that we had about, I'll get to the exact numbers. We had equal numbers of listings that come on the market in Durango and equal number that had pended, which I think, again, is really a positive indicator. So sold comparables, this is a lagging measure because we're looking at sold activity. The median escrow period, or the time of which a property goes under contract to closing, is roughly 45 days on median. And so we can start to see that we were, relatively, hanging in there as far as the trend. We may start, see that change here, but as we continue to track this and see more data, more weeks of inventory, we'll start to see the validity in the trending. So getting a little bit more specific into in-town listings, breaking it down further. So in-town listings, we saw 5 listings come on the market here. And this is in 2020, and then in 2019, we certainly had seen more listing inventory coming on. Durango pendings, this was, again, like I think that this was, to see this trend here as inventory is continuing to transact. And I think that that's a big message for a lot of folks out there who may be thinking that now is the time to be conservative or withdraw. There's pending activity. There's buyers and sellers out there that are coming into an agreement. And the question really becomes is, if you're interested in selling your property, how can we leverage the time of the market now for you to attain that goal? And then if you're in the purchasing market, right, the interest rates are continuing to be really low. There's certainly some opportunities for buyers out there to be engaged. And this, I think that this, this graph shows that the real estate market is continuing to move. Now, for comparison year over year, it is our units are down, our pending activity is down from a numbers standpoint, and it'll be interesting to continue to trend what how we compare to 2019. Okay, so looking at in-town sold activity, numbers are down. That's also a reflection of inventory availability, you guys, too. So it's not only a COVID response, but it's certainly, you know, if we don't have the inventory available to transact, then of course our units are going to be down. So inventory is a key aspect of the fluidity of a marketplace. So looking at Durango rural, you know, we're starting to see, you know, maybe some opposite trending potentially here in the rural market. We had roughly about 3 properties come on this last week. Durango pendings, rural pendings, excuse me. So you can see a pretty big differential in pending activity from a rural market, Durango rural market standpoint. And again, as we continue this data, we'll start to see how things are really starting to trend. But at the end of the day, there are still certainly transactions that pended last week, this last 7 weeks here in the Durango rural market. And for those that are watching and engaging this, maybe it's live, Facebook, or the recording, know that if you are interested in receiving the breakdown per price point, so maybe you have some initiatives to potentially sell a home, or maybe you're an investor and looking at what price points are moving and where the opportunity lies in the marketplace, looking at pricing segments is really important. So for those that are interested, I'll be putting a link in the Facebook thread, and then also sending out in the recording for you to automatically get the reporting that I'm putting together every week. I do send out the reporting per price segment in email format. So Durango rural sold listings year over year. You know, we're relatively, you know, we started out in this time frame even stronger than 2019 for that rural market sold activity, and we're relatively comparable in the units sold here this past week. So let's look at some statistics in a different way, looking at those same figures, but yet not year over year. So let's just look at how we've tracked in 2020. The blue is your new listings, the red is pendings, and then the green is sold. So blue, we've seen a slight, you know, decrease in new listings coming to the marketplace. So again, my emphasis is for those that are considering the notion of selling your property. There's opportunity to take advantage of right now. Pending activity, and this is what I alluded to a little bit earlier, we saw a correlation, and we added 10 to the marketplace, and 10 were absorbed by going under contract. You guys, that's a really positive. It's a really positive thing. A message that I want to share to those that are actively engaging in the real estate market. Sold inventory, you can see that we had 11 sold properties this last week for the Durango market. Bayfield continues to be you know, pretty steady. Steady. You don't see the volatility as much. We did not see any sold properties. So again, that was a measure of what is lagging. So the previous 30-45 days roughly. We'll start to likely see these pending inventory come into play for sold comparables. We had added 4 new Bayfield properties to the marketplace, and we pended 5. So again, that's very strong too. For those that are working in the Bayfield sector, maybe you have a house to sell or you're purchasing, you can certainly see that the Bayfield market is moving as well. Durango in town. We added 5 new listings in town. We pinned 5 new listings as a marketplace in town, and we sold 2. Yeah, I think that is, again, very positive indicators there. The rural market, we brought on 3 new listings to the marketplace. We sold 3 this past week, and we closed 7. So we continue to see strong closing numbers in the rural market overall for the time frame. Again, this is starting March 19th through up until the 23rd here. Bayfield in town, we added 2 to the marketplace last week. We pended 1. Bayfield rural, we added 2 to the marketplace. We pended 4. So interesting that you can start to see that that segment is moving relative to the Bayfield numbers. And for both Bayfield in town and Bayfield rural, there were no closings this past week. And we'll start to again see these pendings. So as we get up to the 30-day mark, we'll start to see some of these pendings here that were, in March. We're going to start to see those close. So let's look at the totals as well. So we've kind of broke out the data into weekly segments, and yet let's also look at where we started. So March 19th through to today, or April 22nd this week, the rolling 7-day time frame that we're analyzing. And 2019 is in the blue, 2020 is in the red, new listings, pending inventory, and sold. So new listings, definitely we see that differential there. Again, my message to folks, if you are considering selling your home, we need the inventory. There's opportunity to leverage, and it's certainly worth having a conversation with your realtor. I'm certainly happy to engage in that conversation with you directly and just provide the perspective that you need to know in order to best leverage the opportunity that you have if the goal is to sell. Pendings, seeing a differentiator here. It will be interesting to continue to track pending inventory, especially as time develops and as maybe the pressures of the marketplace build, meaning that we have very, very high levels of unemployment nationally speaking. So how will that start to trickle into the Durango market? It's not going to be immediate. Again, message to those that are selling, we need the inventory. And for those, for forecasting what the buyer demographic may look like, there may be pressures building in that buyer segment over time as people start to, as their finances and the financial picture, maybe job security, things like that, as that starts to shift as a response to COVID. So we've pended 47 properties, which again, I mean, it's not zero, you guys. Like, properties are pending. Real estate is moving. Now we are down year over year for these numbers for this respective time frame, but it's also important to keep the perspective that even as we headed as 2019 over 2018, we started to see some indicators of a shifting marketplace. So this isn't, these numbers aren't 100% reflective of COVID dynamics, in my opinion. It's a part of the equation, but we also have to know that we were leading into some shifting metrics of our marketplace in general for, when we look at 2019 over 2018, and then looking at 2020 over 2019. Sold comparables that, we're pretty close. The differential there is not a lot. So yeah, I think that's really good perspective. If you want to dive into deeper questions on that, certainly welcome that. Bayfield is moving very well. You consider what are the dynamics in play relative to Bayfield in comparison to Durango. Of course, the Bayfield being a feeder market to Durango, or a ancillary market for those that it's lower price points. Your entry level price point is very different than Durango. It certainly offers a different product. You have a lot more rural. It's I think it's moving very well. And you can see that we're actually pending more properties in this segment of time this year than we did last year. Very, very steady on closings and new listings as well. So the Bayfield market is moving quite strong. And we will, for those again that are interested in diving into the pricing conversation, or looking at the pricing segments, you can do that by signing up for that email distribution. I'm going to go over to Facebook real quick and check and see if we have any questions. Okay, so the second part of this series is mindset, and we are going over Shift. It's a business book about how to shift in a shifting marketplace. So things have shifted as a business, irregardless of the segment that you operate within. So these are some tactics to help provide some guidance and tactical measures to consider as we, as business owners, look to thrive through the shift. So tactic 4 is find the motivation in lead generation. So if your ship doesn't come in, swim out to it. I like that. Just reading you some of my highlights. So you can aid someone to better understand, to help someone better understand your product or service opportunity, but you can't motivate them. Their motives are their own, and their rationales or reasonings are their own. And since you can't actually motivate people, your only choice will be to go out and find more. So it talks about, again, finding the motivated lead generation, despite what segment of business that you're working within. Our job is to serve and educate and help guide people towards the product or service you have available. You can't motivate people that are not motivated. So it's a matter of finding the motivated people for your product or service. I talked about this previously. You have two businesses that you're involved with, whatever service product that you sell or offer, and then you're in the lead generation business as well. So it's, as we navigate as business owners navigate this shift, it's important to realize that the lead generation mechanism of your business is important now more than ever, as it really always is, if we have to have people that are purchasing our product or service in order to be in business. And in a shift, it's going to take maybe even triple the efforts for the same results in order to find those motivated to purchase or to purchase your service or product. I thought that this was key, and the quote here is, it isn't an issue of having time, but an issue of making time and then protecting it. One of the rules that we live by at Real Estate with Katherine is that if it's not on your schedule, it doesn't exist. If it's not really, in my world, it's not about selling real estate, it's about following a schedule. And so following a schedule, finding the time and protecting it is key as we navigate, as we operate as business owners. Lead generation is nothing more than a set of tasks and skills that are well documented. It's time on task over time. Those were all good points there. In general, despite what product or service you offer, it's also a matter of taking the time to master your scripts and dialogues. What is the message that you need to deliver to people so that they can hear you, and you can help guide them to what is the best decision for them to make. If your past sales success, either part of or in total, were from riding the wave of an increased market, so a good positive increasing marketplace, the odds are the easy business you enjoyed may have virtually disappeared. To get back on track, there are 3 forward action steps that you must take for your sales business moving in a positive direction. So stop what doesn't work. I thought this was just so simple. It's just so simple. Stop what doesn't work. figure out what does work and then ramp it up. So increase that, again, it might take 3 times the effort to get the same result. So stop doing what doesn't work. The quote here, we can evade reality, but we cannot evade the consequences of evading reality. So getting real with what works, what doesn't. Effectiveness, is an ongoing and never-ending process of evaluation and adjustment. The principle that I got out of this is when a market shifts, it just simply requires you to take a step back and immediately stop doing what isn't working, because you can't afford not to. You can't afford to invest in dollars or time that is not providing you a return. So figure out what does work in any lead generation. The successful keys for successful lead generation is message and method. So what is the message that you're delivering? The message needs to match the marketplace. And you need to know who your audience is that you're delivering that message to. The smartest lead generators know that people respond to messages that matter to them now. So as a business owner, with everything going on with COVID, what is the message that people need to know from you and your business right now that can serve them? Those are some of my key notes that I made from that chapter. I thought that it would be of value to any business owner out there, just to focus in on what are the things that are important relative to lead generation, what's your message, what's your value to the community, making sure we are streamlining the things that are working, the things that are not working, we understand what that is, and that we're ramping up our initiatives and speaking to those that are motivated that are motivated and or that need our product or service. So I trust that you find this valuable. I really appreciate you guys joining with me. If you have any questions at all relative to the real estate market, I'm here for you guys as your real estate partner. There's 2 items of value that I believe that I can give to you respective to data. Of course, this series, if you're interested in the breakdown of pricing segments over these last several weeks, email me, subscribe to that email list. I'll make sure you get that information for you to review. Second thing, so I guess there's 3 things. Second thing is I have a mobile app that I would love to share with you. It's driven by smart analytics and smart data. It helps you to analyze what's happening in your marketplace. It has some really awesome features that's probably unlike anything else that you've ever tried. It is a nationwide search platform, as well as all the way down to the subdivision level. So really, really cool feature, really awesome tool for you guys that, just like to maybe even look at real estate, right? I mean, I think that that's everybody at some point. So I'm happy to send that to you. I'll provide that link. And then I also am doing a monthly neighborhood update. So if you're interested in what's happening in Sky Ridge or what's happening in Three Springs, whatever neighborhood that you're a part of, if you're interested in getting an in-depth look as to new listings or pending activity, what are prices doing, let me know. I'm going to also post another link for that for those that are interested in that type of data, that they can sign up for that. So I'm gonna sign off. Again, thanks for being with me. I appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. And I trust you and yours are very happy and everybody's healthy. So enjoy your weekend and talk to you next week.